So thank you all for coming out to DevTO. Today is our first event of our 5th year here in Toronto. If you are looking to speak at any of our events or need to reach any one of us in terms of questions, feedback, you want to present, or you're looking for jobs in the city, please feel free to reach to any one of these folks here. And you can email us your presentations, brief description to talks@devto.ca. The hashtag for the evening is #DevTO, so any of your tweets, please include that in your tweet. We do have a code of conduct, and it's in effect starting now, and before actually. But basically, don't get drunk, be nice to everybody, and we're all going to be happier. If you need to read the whole thing, it's on devto.ca/coc, and what we expect from everybody, including our speakers, sponsors, and attendees. The mailing list is available at devto.ca. That's where we sign up. That's where we send out news, discount codes, and other things happening in the city. So feel free to register there. The tickets launch on the first Monday of every month. So next week on Monday will be the tickets for the next event. And then here are all the links for future events, videos, presentations, and our Twitter accounts. We're going to get started with our sponsors. First up, Creative Niche, our recruiting partners this evening. And we have Kimmy here who's going to tell us about Creative Niche.
Hi everyone. Yes, my name is Kimmy Abdullah, and I am the Director of Marketing Operations at Creative Niche. How many people have heard of Creative Niche before? Awesome, yeah. So as you know then, we're the world's greatest creative and digital recruitment agency. And we work with a lot of small, all the way up to giant global corporations, and we help them find the digital and design talent that they need. So if you're looking for somebody that you need to hire, then definitely consider us. Or if you're looking for an opportunity, you need to get out to where you are, then consider us. We're at creativeniche.com. We also just released our Talent Forecast 2016. So if you're really interested in knowing what the trends are, the hiring trends across the industry, I highly recommend you download it. It's really, really great. We talked with a lot of industry experts to put all of this together. So you can download that at creativeniche.com. And if I can just put my other hat on, I'm also part of the catering team that catered tonight's event, Patojo Food. Thank you. We are offering a special discount to DevTO community. We sell retail food, so if you hate cooking and you need something really quick, either for your lunches or your dinners, we're the place to come. So if you go to patojofood.com, you can check us out online. We will leave our cards tonight, so you know where to find us. Thanks.
Next up, we've got Bodan from Breitling. So, what?
Hi guys, I'm a web developer at Mercatus, and my name is Kelly. Mercatus has been a long-time sponsor of DevTO, and we are essentially Shopify for grocers. So we do a lot of grocery e-commerce. So large sites like PriceChopper.com, we handle their whole online experience. So we are currently hiring for DevOps, full-stack LAMP developers, Ionic mobile developers, as well as QA automation engineers. We have a really awesome corporate culture, cupcakes, candy, beer Fridays, a lot of great things. If you're interested in hearing more about the culture or any of our roles, just come and talk to me after the meetup. Thanks.
Next up, we've got George from Top Hat.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm George from Top Hat, and by the name of the company, you probably don't really know what we do. Top Hat's in the business of disrupting post-secondary education. We've already started. We've made good inroads. We're used in almost every major university in North America, and we're out to basically kill the clicker. Does everyone know what a clicker is? Yeah, okay, well, we want to kill the clickers. And that's just getting started. We have a lot of other interesting things we're doing to disrupt education. And so I invite anyone who's interested in pretty much any aspect. We're hiring all through engineering, DevOps, full stack developers, mobile, and QA automation as well. And we also have other openings in sales and I think marketing. So if you're interested, give us a shout. Thanks.
So DigitalOcean is where we host our website. So they just opened a data center in Toronto a few months ago. It's one of the few cloud providers I'm aware of that have a data center in Toronto, so check them out. Wealthsimple, or is there anybody from Wealthsimple here? Yeah. So Wealthsimple is Canada's fastest growing online investment manager. We've got this deal for DevTO members. You will get your first $10,000 managed for free. So check that out at wealthsimple.com/DevTO if you're interested. And next up we'll have Flip.
Thanks. I'm Dave. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Flip. We make it really easy for people to save money on their weekly shopping, bringing together all the flyer and coupon content into one easy-to-use app. We recently were added to the list of best workplaces in Canada for the 3rd year. We also recently closed a Series C round of funding, about $60 million from General Atlantic. We're about 230 people located here in Toronto at the Bloor Islington subway station, and we're looking to hire across the board in engineering, sales, marketing, operations. So if you have any questions, feel free to come talk to me afterwards, or Shwed is here as well.
So without all these great sponsors, DevTO wouldn't be possible. As you know, this is a free event. So thank you to all sponsors for supporting us tonight and continuing to support us the past 5 years. Last but not least, actually, we've got Mustafa from Design Co-Founders, the host for this evening here. So Mustafa, if you can tell us a bit about what you guys do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Design Co-Founders. First of all, if you haven't been here before, a little bit about us. So we're a user experience design agency. We work with startups and organizations to do UX, UI design, product strategy, and research. So I'll explain DC through the logo, the red square, the blue square, and the yellow square. So the red square represents the agency, and that's the studio in the back. The blue square represents education. So we have a classroom here that we use to offer courses in design thinking, user experience design, and interface design. You can find it at designcofounders.com/education. They're great courses. If you have a startup or an organization that you want training for, let us know as well, so we provide training for companies too. The yellow square represents community. So we love hosting events here, just like this one. If you'd like to use the space in the future for your event, just get in touch with events at designcofounders.com or just ask me. We're happy to open up our space. And plugging DesignTO is on May 11th. So if you'd like the design version of DevTO, we're going to have a talk on the designer's journey. Really excited about it. It's our first DesignTO in about 6 months, and we're going to have them on a monthly basis as well. So look out for it. You can find it on meetup.com/DesignTO. Last but not least, as we're at a dev meetup, Design Co-Founders is growing. So we're looking to add a senior software developer for our team or a CTO for a product that we're building. It's called the Writing Project. It's an essay writing app for students. So if you're interested or know anybody that is, please get in touch with me and I'll happy to let you know more. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy the event tonight.
All right, so how many of you have heard about the DevTO 5K happening May 29th? How many of you plan to attend? All right, so for our 5th year, we planned, we're going to do these 5 special events this year. One of them is this DevTO 5K. We're going to gather as many developers as we can to go for a 5K run around downtown Toronto. So that's happening May 29th. That's a Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Should take between 15 minutes to an hour, depending on if you're running or walking. It's going to take me about an hour, but I'm going to be the last pacer at the back. So we're going to start off at Bright Lane, and we have a small route that we're going to announce later this month. But do check it out and sign up on Meetup. It's a $10 donation. And basically it's all going to Textdale, this organization in Toronto that helps youths in I guess minority communities in Toronto develop some tech skills and you know, stay out of trouble. So, what? Is there a prize? There is a prize. It's a prize for participating. And there's no winner here. We're all winning. And we're going to give out one of these. We haven't decided yet, but it's a wearable Fitbit. You can't attend. You can still do a $10 donation. Or if you have something else in mind, you can go to textdale.com and .ca, I mean, and donate $1 million to the organization.
As a shout out actually as well, Design Co-Founders is a corporate sponsor, so corporate sponsors are up to $300. And if you do donate on as a corporate sponsor, your logo and organization will be featured through their work. On top of that, if you have any, I'm really passionate about them, they're great people. If you'd like to host workshops, if you'd like to host them at your organization or go out to Rexdale to work with them, they're really open to that as well. So reach out, get in touch, amazing cause.
So yeah, so sign up if you can, or if you can't, just do it. All right, so FSTO, yeah, 2016 is coming up. I was just making sure I said that right. James will give us a quick intro to what this conference is about.
Hello. So if you're in front-end, back-end, DevOps, UX, project, product, we've got some awesome content coming up for you. 2 days full of awesome networking, content, fun, pretty much sums it all up. Use discount code DevTO and you'll save $75. It's October 17th to 18th this year at the Sheridan Center right downtown. We've also moved it to weekdays this year from all the user feedback, so we look forward to seeing all of you out there. And register soon because the prices will go up.
Thank you, James. Okay, Toronto Tech Masters Slack channel is techmasters.chat. There's hundreds of people on there now, so check it out, and you can, between all these meetups that are happening throughout the month, you can kind of stay in touch with the rest of the community. And now to our main event of the evening, we're going to have our culture talks. So will our panelists come up to the stage, and we'll get started with the talks. We'll do a quick round of intros from everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I just wanted to make a quick round of introductions to everybody on our panel today. To start off with, I'm Teresa Catherine. I'm the Director of Talent for Creative Niche. And we're thrilled to be talking about culture and diversity today. There's really hot topics, and I think a really important area of concern for a lot of employers, especially in the city where a lot of talent are really highly sought after, especially in the digital space. So I just wanted to quickly introduce our panelists today. Sorry, this is a little bit too close. First we have Avery Francis. She's a Senior Talent Manager at Wrangle.io. And then we have Maria Cartagena, Vice President, Human Resources at IntelliResponse Systems. And then we have Marlena, who is the co-founder and CEO of Forte. And then we have Warren Gedge, CTO at Resolver Inc. And last but not least, we have Dave Meyer, CTO and co-founder of Flip. So thanks everyone again for joining us, and we just want to kind of maybe jump right into the conversation. So I really wanted to start the conversation actually by asking what is workplace culture and what does it include? Because I think that everybody talks about culture, but not necessarily everybody understands what culture really is. So maybe we can start with you, Avery. We'll talk about workplace culture. What is it?
Okay, so for me, workplace culture isn't necessarily like a concept in the sense that it's something that's linear, and like it's not something that is, you know, as it is. I think it's something that evolves and grows with time and as people join the company, and I think it's definitely something that's more of a goal. So for us at Wrangle.io, for example, we define it by 3 pillars. So MET, so mission, empowerment, and then as well as transparency. So we look at those 3 things and how they collectively work together, and how that influences the way that we kind of operate as an organization from the top down, and then also how like people feel on a day-to-day basis while they're working with us. So, you know, do they connect with the mission that we have as an organization, and do they identify with it, and are they passionate about it, are they excited about it? And then from an empowerment perspective, is like, do they feel empowered on a daily basis with what they're doing, the work they're doing, and with the impact that they're potentially making within the team? And then transparency is a huge one, and I think that traditionally it wasn't necessarily available to people at corporate organizations, and at larger organizations you don't necessarily see a lot of this. But the good thing about working at Wrangle.io, or even in some cases like smaller startups, or even, you know, just progressive, you know, thinking companies, you have the opportunity to like actually understand what's going on from a business perspective and be in tune with that, and to kind of be a part of those conversations. So a way that we support that at Wrangle.io, I don't want to obviously cover a huge topic, we have a lot of time today, but we have guilds for a lot of different topics and conversations within the organization. So we have Caroline, who's here today, and we have a women in tech guild, also diversity guild, and everyone's involved. Everyone who wants to be involved is involved in that guild, and they have a voice within that guild, and you can really make an impact and influence change within that guild. And we have a lot of other guilds that help to support that type of transparency within the organization. So that's how I define culture.
Great. So maybe we can get someone like a different perspective. Maybe Dave over on that end. We can find out from you, what does culture mean, and what does it include for your organization?
Sure. I mean, the way I look at it is it's the way that your team and your company operates. There's kind of an unspoken set of rules that you'll operate by, and it's something that at Flip, how myself and my co-founders started working, it kind of evolved, and we basically took a look at how we function, how we operate, how we work together, and then we're able to distill that into how we actually train our employees in terms of how we operate. So we have like a culture of freedom and responsibility, where we want to entrust the people that are working with us with, you know, we're hiring for the skills that they have, and we want to be able to trust that they're going to execute, but also make sure that they're going to be accountable for the things that they do. So not micromanaging and saying, okay, you do this, 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 and this, but being able to give them that freedom and really empower them, as you mentioned. But also looking at how you operate in some kind of specific scenario. So how you run meetings and how you would debate things. One of the things that's really important to us is making sure that we, as a team, come to the best decision possible for the company. And you can only get to that through active debate and working things out with the team, and making sure that you know that when you're putting your ideas forward, that they're going to be challenged, not because you know, it's kind of the default way, but we want to make sure that whatever decisions that we make, especially like the really important level 1 decisions that are going to decide the future of the company, we want to make sure that those are well thought out, and we look at it from every angle.
Okay, great. So, I mean, there is this thing called culture, but how do you go about defining what it is? Like, you know, Warren, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you define culture in your own organization.
Well, to me, culture is part of who you are in an organization and what you want to do. And whether that's empower, or whether that's remote work or work home, or what kind of structure that is, the culture is a set of values set out by the founders, or by the people running it, or by the CEO or the executive level, who are, this is what they want people to do, or they want people to follow, and they want everyone to be part of the same team. Cultures go back into sports or go back into other things, and it's not necessarily vertical or area specific, but more about that company itself and what it wants to achieve. Now, as for defining a culture within, I think it depends on where the organization is and its structure. If you're talking about building a culture, then I would very much do what he was saying. I think pretty much the founders or the people who are starting it sit down and assess what they value and what they agree with and disagree with, and set together principles for that. If you're bringing companies together, well, then you mix that up a little bit differently. But it's a fact of who you are as an organization and how you want people to, what you want them to follow or believe in.
Okay. In some organizations, obviously, there's acquisitions. Maria, maybe you can talk a little bit about how do you go about defining a culture when perhaps two different organizations with two different cultures come together?
It's interesting because we're sort of in the process of that now, and teleresponse is no longer at this point. April 1st, we're now 24/7 customer Canada Inc. So, we were a small 50-man company when I started. We're over 100 now. We were acquired about 18 months ago. So, actively went out looking to be acquired because we were looking for the right strategic partner at the time. The company that we've been acquired by, 24/7, is much larger. I mean, on one side of the business, there's tens of thousands of employees on the call center side, but on the actual technology and engineering side, where they're developing voice products very much like ours. Ours is a virtual agent product. They were about 1,300, so not so big that it's not manageable. But at the same time, they went through the same struggles that we did, right? So sort of understanding what those are. They went from being 0 employees to 500 overnight. Now they're 1,300. They're actively acquiring companies. So this is something we're still investigating. I wouldn't say that I have all the answers to it. What I do think, though, is that we've started to really look at what about our culture aligns. So what do we have in common? And sort of trying to protect and keep those things as they were important to the company. And where are we apart from each other? And then trying to figure out how we're going to deal with those. Do we make a decision to have a multicultural system rather than one culture? Is that possible, really, when you have people in San Francisco, in Toronto, in India, Philippines, Guatemala, Nicaragua? It becomes different. What's important to those individuals and those employees in every region changes. So trying to find, again, overarching themes or behaviors, the way we decide things, the way we manage people, the way we communicate, all of those things.Ose overarching things we sort of built as foundational items. Those are important across the globe. But every local office has its own sort of multi-subculture, if you will, that sort of works within the larger culture. And we're still working towards it now. I wouldn't say that we've perfected it. It's definitely a difficult thing, but I think that the sooner you can communicate, and the sooner you make it a priority. And in fact, if you're involved in any due diligence at all, as I was for this company, that is probably one of the biggest things that you should look at from a due diligence perspective, is the cultural impact that you'll have when you actually do merge, acquire with other companies, what have you. Because if the cultures don't align, it will 100% hold up integration. And that holds up productivity. You lose a ton of talent. It's a huge distraction, colossal waste of time for everybody. And I think everyone in the room has probably been part of a bad one. So we all know what that means, but I think that's probably one of the most emerging things that are important from my perspective is around the due diligence piece, is seeing how aligned are we to begin with.
So it's really important to kind of define what that culture is. And then, so I think one of the biggest questions is too, once you have that defined, how do you hire against cultural fit? So I think, Marlena, you have probably a lot of really intelligent insights there that you might want to share with the audience here tonight.
Sure. So is it working?
Oh, I think it's working.
Okay. So yeah, Forte, we actually help companies assess culture fit by looking at the cultural archetypes of an organization. And those individuals help to create this unique cultural profile that then becomes the baseline. And at Forte, we have a cultural assessment that is focused on the values and beliefs of an organization, and therefore able to fixate on culture as opposed to an assessment of an individual, and that becomes embedded into the hiring process, and help to help to assess the candidates based on relative team fit. And of course, like you said, Avery, culture is dynamic, and over time that changes, and that's important to assess and maintain internally, as well as look for ways to improve and hire for culture fit externally.
Okay. What about maybe someone else? Dave, how do you hire for culture fit?
Well, a lot of it starts even before you interview somebody. I mean, it's like you need to understand what your culture is and what it really means, and distill that, because that's also going to be part of conversations that you have with people when you speak to them about Flip or whatever company you're at. Then you go through the interview process, and you're really tailoring the interview process to look for those qualities that you're looking for. So you're going to come up with a set of questions that you're going to ask, and you want to standardize that set of questions so that every time you ask, you're able to compare the results across candidates. So being able to, for example, we test for humility. So we'll have questions, and we'll be looking for specific language that candidates use about, when they worked as part of a team, and they, or when they made mistakes, and being able to admit that they made mistakes. So those are some of the ways that we do that.
Okay, great. So, I mean, you have this culture, you hire for it, and then so you're bringing in different people on board. Either for your organization, you guys are going through a lot of growth right now. How do you assess and monitor that culture?
So there's lots of ways. There's really interesting tools out there that actually help you to do this. So Tiny Pulse, or Tiny HR, is one where you can do that, as well as Culture Amp. So that's a plug for you guys. If anyone here works there, that was free. I'm kidding. It's a terrible joke. But that's a good way to assess it. But also just like monitoring it. I think that like from Roop, who's the VP of HR and talent over at Wrangle with me, he's here today as well. And the way that we work is, I think that we're definitely more so focused on the employee experience and the human side of human resources. So checking in with people, having conversations with people, because I think that everyone's individual experience is going to be different when they join an organization. And I think that an interesting point to kind of like hiring for culture fit is really truly to like understanding what people want from the very beginning of the interview process. So whenever myself or Rube sit down and speak with a potential candidate, we ask them, like, if you were to package up and build your dream job, your ideal role, what would it look like? I think that understanding those from the very beginning, and then also having a relationship that could go past the interview process, and an open door policy where people can feel comfortable with talking to you and monitoring and checking in, that's a good way to do it without the expensive tools like Culture Amp or a Tiny HR. Because I think that the human side of things is a really good way of going about it and just having an open conversation. So that's a way that we.
You don't use any like software or technology right now?
I have used in the past. We have, but right now we're currently not doing so. Something that we are and have looked into. Not sure necessarily where that will net out just yet.
And so maybe Marlena, you can talk a little bit about some of the technology and software and how you think that is really important to continue to assess and monitor culture.
Definitely, culture is the main reason why people go to a company and want to work there, and it's also one of the top reasons why people leave. So it's the route to, I think, honestly, a company's success story. And assessing it and having a pulse on it is really important. And to Avery's point, they invest a lot of time trying to assess and make sure they do bring in a lot of, someone that is a culture fit for the company. But unless you have, it's really great to have a data-driven approach or a way to objectively measure that. And sorry, can you repeat the question?
How do you assess and monitor culture, and do you use any technology?
Well, yeah, that would be Forte, and how we do it. I feel like I already answered that, but it's like the cultural survey, and that we look at the values and beliefs and try and define the ideal work environment for both the candidate and the employer, and match for relative team fit on that basis.
So for our panelists, so if you're struggling to find talent with a specific skill set, how important does cultural fit come into play? For example, would you turn away a candidate if they weren't the right cultural fit, but they were really hard to find specialized skill set?
We would.
Yeah.
And we have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
What do you have to say, Warren? Warren has something to say.
Well, for me, a resume gets you to the door, but it doesn't get you the job. The job part gets from telling your life story and figuring out what kind of person you are and whether you have the humility and all the other pieces. Now, if somebody's not a right fit, like they need to work from home or they need to work slightly differently, if they are impressive enough and they do, like the team resonates with them, that I think it's never, I don't think you should ever have a locked-in culture per se. I don't think it's something you jump on. I think it requires a lot of extra thought. But culture, I think, is ever evolving to some degree. Like, companies are changing, life changes, technologies change. There are cores there that should stay relatively solid. I agree with a lot of the points people have said. But they will change. 15 years ago, people didn't work from home, and culture's changed. Now you have mixed, straight home, you have every kit and caboodle out there. I've had people take trips down to South America for a month and work out of the mountains. Like, it's not a... If the person works and they work with their team and they output and you don't need to babysit, like, if they can fit the culture to a point where they can actually meet those values and you just need to adjust slightly, rigidity will kill you.
I think I agree with everything. I agree with all those points, but I think that when I think about cultural fit, if I meet with someone, and I'm just going to be completely frank here, if they are rude or a bit of a jerk or a bit of a, like, you can tell they're like a bit of a controversial type of character, then no, I don't think that it's okay to move forward with that type of individual. Because I think that even if it is like a work from remote situation, and I'm not suggesting that this is what you were speaking about, but it really makes a strong impact, specifically within the type of team settings that we have. Like, we have a lean, agile UX approach. Our team sizes are like 6 to 7 people tops. So if you have someone that has a bad attitude, for example, and this is something that you can usually pick up through the interview process, it makes a huge impact on the team, and that could potentially cause other people to leave. So I think that for every person that comes through that's brilliant, that isn't necessarily a strong cultural fit, there is someone out there that is equally as brilliant that is a cultural fit, and it's just a matter of waiting for that individual.
I was going to add, I'm in agreement with that completely, because I think flexibility, like for me, culture is not really about rules, right? So the flexibility I agree with completely. I think if they're talented and they're good for culture and they're high performing, then obviously there's all kinds of flexibility that would be afforded to those kind of individuals. But when I first started with IntelliResponse, there was sort of a little, I mean, it's probably not the right thing to say from an HR perspective, but I don't care. I was like, I don't care if you are like top talent. I don't care how good you are on paper. I don't care how good you think you are at your job. If you're a pain in the ass, you don't get to stay. And it actually was something that I would say out loud, and people would start repeating it to follow every HR harassment policy rule, whatever out there. But it was something that was really important to us. There are people that are tolerated because of their talent, creativity, whatever, and it becomes like blood in the water. It spreads and it's pervasive through an organization, and then it becomes about managers having to defend why we make decisions to put up with bad behavior. And I think that is it's really hard to turn that ship around. The minute that starts at an organization, it's very hard to turn that around. So you have to sort of stick to it to some degree, and we've had people that we were iffy on, for sure, and we were like, we're not sure how they're gonna work. We could put them through all of our cultural interviews. We have a multi-interview approach. There's tons of people who are involved in our interviews. So we hope to get to know them very well by the time we make them an offer. But every once in a while, someone slips through, right? And we just make sure we exit those people fairly quickly. We try to talk to them in advance, obviously, to course correct in the event that they just don't understand. But if it's clear that they're just, again, not collaborative, not really open to feedback, not, has a high ego versus talent ratio, like that kind of thing, then we start to exit them fairly quickly, because it's blood in the water, as far as I'm concerned.
Dave, you have something
Yeah,
you're
so
dying to say
we
over there.
have about 6 core traits, and we would not compromise on any of those. We found that anytime we've done that in the past, it hasn't worked out, so we would just not compromise on that.
Excellent. So, another question is, what about for freelance? So you have freelancers, contractors, how do they fit into the mix of the whole cultural conversation? Do you hire a lot of contractors or freelancers?
We do not hire a lot of contractors,
Does anyone
freelancers.
understand?
Sometimes we'll do it for like writing, things like that, where it's not something that we want skill that we want to develop in-house, or it might be some specific thing that we want to do, but we very rarely will deal with freelancers, consultants.
I've hired for a lot of, not at Wrangle, we actually only hire full-time employees, but my last role we did, I think half of the hiring was 50-50 split between full-time and contract. And I'd say that the same emphasis was put on from a cultural fit. Because let's just say you have this project for a client, and at Razorfish it was large clients, big, large-scale enterprise type solutions, and you have a team of like 25 people working together, you bring in this contractor to potentially work on a pitch, and the contractor is not necessarily getting along with the creative director, or doesn't get along with, and I'm having someone nod to me because we work together, so it can really shake up a project, especially when it's short term. At least when someone's long term or full time within an organization, you potentially have the opportunity to coach them and to work through the problem and to talk to them about it. But when you hire contractors, probably because you need something done immediately, and obviously you know this from your background, it can, like blood in the water, it's just a terrible, terrible type of experience. I've been lucky enough to not really experience that fully, but the one time I hired someone that wasn't necessarily a strong cultural fit, and this is the one person that was the one person in the whole time my last role that was let go, it was when I had a gut feeling that this person was not the right cultural fit. So I just don't take chances.
So gut instinct goes to, is a big part of it.
Well, not necessarily gut instinct. Like I asked specific questions that led me to believe that they weren't the right cultural fit. But we moved forward anyways because they're extremely talented.
Okay. Okay, so we talked a little bit about culture. I want to talk a little bit about diversity as well. So, you know, what are some strategies you implement to integrate diversity and ensuring quality in your corporate culture? Maybe Warren, do you have any thoughts on that too?
Myself, I don't discriminate.
Good.
Well, no, I grew up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs. When I lived in California, our DevOps team was all transvestite, and they dressed up any way they wanted. I've worked in... Closer? Ah, thank you. But I've worked off over pretty much anything under the sun. I've had people that are vertically challenged, men, women, old, new, and I think if you have an open mind, you can give people a chance, and then as long as it never enters into the equation, you don't really have that problem. It's the best person for the job. I think when you start to think about what that fit is in that respect, in that area, I think then you start to cloud and you can actually pass up good talent and you can actually pass up good fits. So I just don't...
So you don't discriminate against it. How do you make sure that it's inclusive?
You put it out to everywhere?
I think it's sort of tough, I think, because most of us are working, or especially in the tech industry, is the fortune and benefit of working for this industry anywhere in digital is that we're, I say by and large, more forward-thinking companies than any of the companies that are out there. So I don't feel the need to have like a quota or to look for certain things, or like I don't have to have rules around diversity or how to be inclusive. We're certainly aware, and so if we hire anyone that may or may not have some inclusivity issues, we try to sort of make sure that they understand this is super open. We want to hear from you if there's any concerns, that kind of thing. But we've not developed any rules around it because it hasn't been an issue. We've never once thought to not be inclusive. We don't know how to be otherwise. I think if you set the right culture, less of those rules are required.
But what about in like in industry like technology, where even gender equality is a very big hot topic?
Yeah, we have like 50%,
yeah,
50-50. Yeah, I mean even on the management team until recently, I would say we had 50-50. Even on our engineering team, I'm proud to say that we have 50-50. Like, and it sort of happened organically. It wasn't, again, this sort of a concerted effort to, sort of make sure we had a certain mix of people, although I think it's important to do. It just sort of happened. We have lots of new Canadians. We don't discriminate against whether or not they have Canadian work experience and like all that kind of stuff. We look for talent. We look for the right talent, and we look for culture fit. And if they fulfill all of those buckets, then anything else doesn't matter. We'll make it work.
Yes, I do. I have something to say. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I think that we have a guild that's focused on this internally, and I think that right now, I don't think that we're perfect, but we're definitely making some really great strides towards getting ourselves there as an organization. But I think that an interesting thing with inclusion and diversity is that, typically speaking, is that you kind of look at it in the sense of, like, oh, you know, like I'm open-minded, like I'm very open-minded in the way that I approach, you know, like being biracial and everything. I've always been very open-minded with the way I pursue like everything in life, and I don't necessarily operate on biases. But it's interesting like how we can operate on biases without actually knowing, and not necessarily with it not being intentional. And from like a recruiting perspective, and just from hiring and generating like a talent pool, when you're not necessarily reaching out to these groups, like for example, like collaborating with Heather Payne over at HackerU, who hired like 50% of the people, more than 50% of the people that are going through her courses are actually women. When you're not going to Black girls who code, if you're not going to you know, different pockets of like different minorities within tech, you're not going to attract these talents. So if you think that you're always hiring the best person for the role, that's great, but how if they're not in that group of individuals that you've reached out to, or that group of individuals that directly applied for your jobs? So it's interesting if you look at some of your job postings, and I would challenge people that work in recruiting or that are hiring managers to look at your job postings and see the people that are applying, and look at what the split is. How many women applied, how many men applied? Obviously going down to race is going to be a little bit difficult based on names, but you can go into LinkedIn and try to sort it out that way. But I think that from like a recruiting perspective, like Wrangle.io tries to partner with different organizations and different initiatives to try to make that happen. So we can actually have an inclusive pool of talent that are available to us from a recruiting and hiring perspective, opposed to just kind of looking down, like narrow. Like, I don't know how to, I hope that's clear for everyone.
Make sure that your job is
absolutely
being
put
out to all sorts of different demographics.
Yeah, and like for now, like recently when I go and I'm sourcing for talent to join our team, if I reach out to 20 men, I ensure that I reach out to 20 women. And it's funny, like the results actually been really awesome. We have the exact amount of female developers as we do male developers in our pipeline right now that are currently interviewing with Wrangle.io, which is much different than when I initially started. So I think that when you're inclusive that way, and you're thinking about diversity when you're hiring and when you're recruiting and when you're having conversations, then that's when you can actually honestly say that you've hired the best candidate, because you're being inclusive to all those different groups.
Right. And what about for in-demand talent? Where do they go in order to kind of find out about a company's true culture, about their hiring practices for diversity, about, you know, what do you think the best source for the candidate market to find out the real deal?
So I always compare recruiting and applying for jobs to dating. So it always goes both back ways. So if you're dating a guy and you initially, or a lady, or anyone for that matter, you're dating someone and you're thinking about whether this could be a good match for you, I think that this kind of goes back to culture as well. But diversity in the sense that like when you're dating them, like the dates are always great at the beginning. They're fancy, they're nice, you're going out, and then 3 weeks later, the guy's like, come over, I'm gonna make you dinner. And then you're like, great. Things kind of like slowly go downhill after that. So for culture, like I think, and diversity, I think that the important, I'm making this funny, but it's really serious in the sense that like if I were a candidate and I was looking at what the diversity of a company looked like, I would definitely go to their website. I would go to, there's a site called Muse, which some organizations are on, which is really useful to check that out. But on top of that, like ask to actually go there and hang out with their team. Like at Wrangle.io, every week on Friday, we get together for drinks. Every week we have someone that's potential talent coming in and having drinks with us and hanging out with us. Last week, singing karaoke with us. Like these things happen. This is an opportunity for them to really see the culture, see what it's like, see how diverse the team is. Because at the end of the day, if you have the best mission, the best product, the best work environment, and all the cupcakes and all the fun stuff in the world, like if you don't see yourself and identify with yourself within their organization, generally speaking, you won't be interested in working there. So if you go and you're a female developer and you see a team of 60 developers, probably not going to want to work there. And that's been statistically proven. So I don't know the source for that, though.
I actually think it's interesting. I really love the candidates who go to their way to do the research and prospect in. And I mean, so certain groups are better than others doing this. Like my marketing and sales folks don't feel any differently about prospecting in. They'll find someone on LinkedIn, they'll try to make a connection, they'll get someone on a phone, they'll try to have a coffee, meet, or somebody that is not maybe the HR person or the hiring manager or whatever, to sort of learn more about the company, or they'll find who am I connected with that knows someone there. I think it's important. I would say the engineering side of the house, that activity happens less. And I'm not sure why that is, other than I would encourage you to do it, because I think more companies than not, just as you had said, are willing to provide that time. We sort of know how hard it is to find good talent. We want people to be attracted to the company. I'm happy to provide all kinds of resources, come hang out, do whatever, but I find on the engineering side that's less, I find it happens less, at least with our company. On the sales and marketing side, we have tons of people who will do it. They'll feel no way about calling up the company, getting in touch with somebody, and finding a way. They'll even prospect into the president, and he'll meet with them. If he's in town, he'll get together for coffee or do whatever. We sort of, as a management team, have all agreed that we should always be looking, regardless of whether or not you have roles in place, like or available. You should always be looking for good people. So we sort of have a culture of doing that already. But I would say, I will admit that on the engineering side, it doesn't happen as much. And I think if I can encourage all of you in the room to do that more, you'd be surprised at the reactions you would get from the companies.
So I really wanted this job at Toronto Wheaton Centre. I was going for a mat leave role, and I went to the point of actually calling the individual that was going on mat leave and asking her, how do I get in? What is the culture like? Who would I be reporting to? And it was the main reason why I got that job is because I showed the initiative, I showed the care, and I felt like it was a good fit at the time for me. And so as Maria said, just in your interview process, if you haven't reached out to the individuals or met them at a meetup or gone on LinkedIn to try and connect with people to double check the culture, ask at the very end of your interview experience, say, hey, can I meet a couple people on the team just to have a quick chat with them? And it goes a long way, on both sides. It does you a good job, or it benefits you to see if you're a good fit, and as well, internally, it looks good on the individual.
Yeah, and I've checked out like the news, and I mean, there's obviously Glassdoor, but I mean, the reality is Glassdoor is going the way of Yelp, right? So as an HR person, I can call up Glassdoor and help them to take stuff down. That's the reality. If I think it's really inappropriate or unfair or it mentions names or does whatever, I can call them up and I can pressure them to take it down. I haven't had to do it, thankfully, because I work for a great company, but I know lots of HR people who do. So, like, I would be cautious of what you read, for sure. The Muse, I mean, they contacted me recently to do an interview and a profile on the company, so I'm not sure how much that is employee-driven versus marketing from the company itself, right? My personal opinion is, like, personal contact. Make an effort. You've got LinkedIn, you can find people there easily. So just make the contact, reach out to people and see.
Yeah, build your own opinion on like the company. I think that like speaking to Glassdoor, it's just, what I found is you have employees that are really happy currently working there that have shared their insights, or sometimes disgruntled employees that have left. And I think that everyone's experience is really unique to them. And I think that it's important just to kind of go in and yeah, like it's similar to dating. Just go in and like if there was a rating system on Tinder, would you trust the rating system? I don't know. Like I'd be more open to kind of just trying to sort it out on my own. Yeah. I know there's a lot of people that use Tinder in here, so you can laugh all you want. I've seen your faces. I'm just kidding. Sorry?
Alrighty, okay. So, let's keep this on track. Let's talk. We love you. Okay, so culture. Does it affect the bottom line? Anyone? I'll take that one. Yeah.
I would say most definitely. I think it may not be apparent initially, but if you're really cautious, like we actually made a concerted effort. We sort of had a culture that was already going, but I think culture sort of happens whether you try for it or not. So we made an effort to sort of reinforce the parts of culture that were really important to us, especially being a small startup. We were a small startup that didn't have VC backing. So that was a big part of who we were. We were self-funded, really, there was a lot of pride that came in being self-funded. kill what you eat. If we don't have customers and we don't keep them happy, then we don't have the funds to do everything else that we need to do. So there's a lot of things that came from that entrepreneurialism and being opportunistic and really not taking any of our customers for granted and all of those things that sort of was built into our culture that were really important to us. We went further on that. We started recruiting on that way, and then we started onboarding that way. We even have a culture section on our performance evaluation process. And it's worth like 20% of your final whatever rating that would impact your comp. And our compensation program is super transparent. We talk about it all the time. We present it at every meeting. So we could sort of align people to how that was. And 20% means it could bring you up or down, right? It'll ding you. If you weren't an active contributor to culture, it would ding you. So the idea was that we would create skin in the game. If there's no skin in the game, then if it doesn't matter to you, then ideally it should matter to you without the comp. But initially, I think we needed some encouragement to provide some reinforcements to it. So when it came to the bottom line, those things were seen, not being VC backed, not having money that didn't exist, right? Very cost-conscious organization. We taught people, depending on where they are in their career, they may or may not understand what CMRR is, right? Like continuing monthly recurring revenue. They may not understand what net impact means, net income and all those kind of things, or how they could. So we went through a series of meetings where we actually taught people what those things meant. So our net income number this year, we were facing the ugliest targets we'd ever had. It was 100% growth this year. And we didn't think, like, how are we gonna make that? That's crazy. We didn't think we'd make it, being such a small company. But our net income number was just confirmed last week at 214%. People understanding that every decision they made every day saved the company money in some way, and that ultimately paid back in their bonus. Right? They understood exactly how that was calculated. Having the kind of commitment towards continued monthly recurring revenue, people were all hands on deck to support customers, to make sure we couldn't afford to lose a customer. And so, really being dedicated to that had an impact for sure. Our culture alone helped us drive a 50% referral, retention referral process. So, I didn't have to use a lot of external recruitment sources to be able to spend exorbitant amounts of money trying to recruit these individuals. And so that helped save money as well. There was different ways that culture, I think, drove those things. Knowing that our sales target was 100% growth, I can't tell you how impressive, the team, everybody, regardless who you were, including me in HR, I sat on procurement calls with customers to make sure that our contracts were renewed. So understanding that sales was the lifeline of our business, and if we all weren't all hands on deck to help close deals, then we couldn't do the fun stuff, right? We couldn't have beer o'clock Fridays, and we couldn't have karaoke nights, and we couldn't have all of those things if we didn't have that sales coming in. So I think it has a huge impact, for sure. But I think it's in the communication. If you're not clear on what those numbers are, what they mean, and you don't consistently report back on how we're doing against those numbers, then it'll get lost in the wash, for sure.
Warren, what about you? How does culture impact your bottom line?
Something that everybody aligns around within an organization. So having them aligned essentially allows them to move forward on the same virtues and on the same attributes. It will allow you to overtake the profit margins. Other than that, I agree with most of what she said.
Marlena, do you have anything to add to that?
Turned it off.
Okay. Just that, I guess, culture really drives engagement, employee engagement, and the reason why they're able to say this is obviously the numbers, follow the numbers, and it does impact it, but employee engagement has a direct impact on the rest of the organization. So from productivity, employee retention, and all the way to the end of profits. And we did a demo over the weekend with a CTO in Silicon Valley, and she summed it up in all of her intros. She was amazing, and she said, "Culture eats everything, as you know." And that resonated, and that's what she was essentially saying. And that's what we're trying to help companies do, is put a culture-first approach to their whole business model, starting with hiring and then moving on to the rest of the organization.
Great. So culture affects the bottom line. It really impacts everyone's, daily sort of day-to-day sort of interactions and experiences. Maybe you guys can share with the audience a little bit about what you love about your own company culture. Dave, want to share with everyone?
I think it's really just about making sure that everybody is moving in the same direction. I think if you're of one mind and everybody's moving towards the same goal, it's really great to feel that momentum. It's like being in a dragon boat race in a boat with a bunch of people, and everybody's paddling in unison in the same direction, and everybody's there to support one another. Because there's going to be set times when you have setbacks, and you want to make sure that you got your team there to help pick you back up and keep going. So for me, it's about having that shared mission, everybody moving towards the same goal and working hard to hit that.
Great. Anyone else want to share with me a little bit about their culture?
Happy to. Yeah, I mean, shared mission for sure. We were all so focused on, we all just really want to be a part of a great company that makes great products. Work with really smart people. I think what I'm most proud of, we've created an organization. I mean, I'm the head of HR, but ultimately, a lot of my work is sort of not your typical, like I guess what you see at HR at other companies, right? We have almost no policies in place, like almost none. I have only the policies in place that I need to so that I can say on a procurement contract and an RFP that we actually in fact do these things. That's all I do. It's less about policing, it's less about all those things. We made a very concerted decision early on that we didn't want to manage to the lowest common denominator. Most of those policies are written to protect, sort of bad behaviors you think are going to happen that usually only happen with about 2% of the population anyway. So we effectively, my pain in the ass rule, we exit those people. And then we stick to those who want good things for the company and for themselves. So I think that's the most proud of. Like I can honestly say from a management perspective, from a staff perspective, if you were to ask around, they'll tell you that we'll do the right thing. There's a trust, an inherent trust, that we would do the right thing without needing a policy to tell me what the rule is for that. So that includes things like not having a sick time policy. I don't care if your kid's sick, your dog's sick, your parent's sick. Like, I don't care. Like everyone has a connectivity from home. You know what you're required to deliver. Like everyone's treated like an adult. And I think that was sort of the strongest thing that came out of our culture in the last 2 years. And things that people hold on to most dear now that we've been acquired. That's the stuff they don't want to lose, right? I don't have a bereavement policy. I don't care if you happen to be closer to your neighbor than your parent and they passed away and you need more time, then take that time. Those are the kind of things, I don't want to have to define those things. I don't think it's necessary. So I think that's the part that I'm most proud of, is that we were not at all a rules-driven approach. It was about doing the right thing and being reasonable, and in return, people were responsible in return. And that was great. Even myself, I had my mother-in-law pass away a few months ago, and I had to go up to North Bay, but I checked in, I did some work on off times, I tried to do what I could to keep up, never left the team in the lurch, and in return, no one asked me where I was or what I was doing here. Like, no one cared about what day I was coming back, So it's important for us.
Warren, what do you love most about your company culture?
Well, we're at a turning ground at the moment. We're bringing two cultures together. So I think the best part I like about it is that we are going to go strongly customer focused and essentially empower the customers. And so we are changing all the policies and procedures and the structure of things to go that route.
Great. Marlena, do you have anything you want to add?
So it's really early days. We're a team of 4, and it's really exciting because we're trying to practice what we preach and put culture first. But definitely having that shared collective goal and that mission is what's really driving us, and actually having a customer focus to ensuring that we're helping them, and it's really exciting. And just collaboration, supporting each other, and having that passion is really driving us, and that's our culture as it is today.
Last but not least, David.
I think there's a lot of things that are really awesome about working with Wrangle and the culture that we've built and are currently continuing to build as we grow. So we grew from 25 to 90 people last year, and we actually are growing from, we're now at 100, but we're doubling in size by the end of this year. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of new faces coming in on a weekly basis. So I love that because I'm a part of the recruiting team, obviously. And a lot of those faces are people that I randomly reached out to on LinkedIn or people I've worked with in the past. So I'm building a culture of really, really awesome people alongside the rest of the team that's helping to contribute to that. But similar to what Maria was saying, we don't have this police type environment. It's definitely, it's a freedom versus structure type of environment. So we don't have any policies. When you mentioned that, Rube kind of looked at me and gave me a nod because he's our VP of HR and also stands by a lot of those types of, would would agree with a lot of things that you were saying as well. So I just think that people are really empowered with the work that we're doing and with the environment that we're working in. It comes from the top down. I saw my CEO sing Purple Rain by Prince last week on Friday after a few drinks and everything. Like that's, you just can't really beat that. And I was singing Aladdin with one of my design coworkers that I haven't really had a lot of conversations with, but we truly connected when we were doing that. Can't even look him in the eyes anymore, to be honest. It was so intense. So I think that that's what I really enjoy about the culture at Wrangle. Is it's just a really fun, geeky, open type of culture with really, really smart, like extremely smart people. I'm learning something new every day. And I think that one of the main reasons why I moved to Wrangle was because I was interested in the learning and growth opportunities, and it's constant. So we invest a lot of time and money and resources into developing our people. We hire really, really smart people from the get-go. We don't hire average talent and try to coach them up to being great. We hire great people from the very beginning and build on them and try to develop them to be even better than when they initially came to join us. So everything from like hack nights to Wrangle University and lunch and learns every Friday and going to conferences and speaking at conferences all over the world. It's just a huge, an awesome culture of learning and developing, and I think that what I can take away is that I know that I'll never go into work and not learn something that day. And I think that that's really important in our industry because it's so easy to fall into a role or into a job where you're not growing or where you're not learning. And it couldn't be worse than that, to be honest, just being stagnant somewhere.
Okay, thank you everyone. I just wanted, before we kind of wrap things up, I wanted to make sure that we opened up the floor to questions for our panelists. If anyone has any questions, if you have a question for a specific panelist, please feel free to address it to a panelist.
Do we need a mic that's floating out there? Or?
Do we have a mic?
Is there a mic?
Do you have a mic?
Question's not really great to keep us on.
Take the question of the day.
Thanks. This question's not really for any of you in particular, but I'm just curious about the process that any of you would have gone through to kind of initially define what your culture would be. Like, maybe.
Yeah, it was really just having conversations, and it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was something that we did over a couple of months, where it was like, okay, just brainstorm what are things that we value, and then look at, okay, what are really the core ones? Because you can come up with a huge list of stuff, but really, what are the most important things? So it's something that evolved over a bunch of meetings over 12 months.
And then did you distill that down to something and then distribute it to your company? How did you?
So we did that fairly early on. I think when we were maybe around 30 or so people. It was really a tool that we would use as part of our recruiting process to help us identify talent. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it's really hard to find those people, right? So it was really just something that we came up with, and it's also we're continuously iterating on and refining the messaging around it as well. But yeah, it was something that basically we developed to help with recruiting and be able to evaluate and make sure that anybody that we bring onto the team kind of fits in, and make sure that we maintain that core.
Is there a feedback loop back with your teams that kind of ensures that the people that you hired are continuously aligned to that? Or? Yeah, so one of the, I think we talked about earlier was like, how do you kind of reinforce that culture and make sure that it stays that way. It requires vigilance. We focus on a lot of our coaches, so we make sure that they are equipped with things that they need in order to have difficult conversations. If somebody's not performing well, how do you address that, right? How do you deal with different scenarios? And really, it's like kind of taking it case by case sometimes. It's like, okay, this is a situation you're in, you work with your coach,
to try and resolve it and use the set of core traits and the culture principles that we have to come up with, well, what is the right solution based on what our principles are and what we want to do.
You've been talking about culture and diversity, but one thing I sometimes hear is that culture can be used as a way to block diversity. So if your culture is young and male and white, that can be a barrier to someone who's not. It probably doesn't apply, hopefully, to your companies, but is there anything you could say to that?
It's so funny because we don't have this issue at our company, but we became very aware of it recently. Only in that our postings, I think, use language that at times may make people believe that we only looked at people who were young. Sometimes tech companies tend to describe themselves as being sort of young, dynamic. There are certain words that go with that make it sound like we would only look at a certain age group. And in fact, it's not true. And our numbers from a diversity perspective, because I did track it at one point because I actually worried that was I doing this somehow. So we actually took some of that language out and we included people in the company to help us make sure that we were wording postings in a way that weren't somehow, without intent, creating a bias in some way. But we did go through that. But like I said, our numbers, thankfully, so before it became a problem, we sort of addressed it. Thankfully, we have great numbers in terms of diversity, but it was a concern at one point, probably about 6 months ago, where we really sort of noticed it in the postings where it said young like several times. And we were like, that's not at all what we intended. Let's take that out and find another way to describe ourselves. Because the truth is the average age has changed over the years. The company's been around 12 or 13 years. It went from being 22 to being 43 average age to being 30 something, and now it's sort of back up again depending on where the company's at hiring. Yeah.
Hi there. Question about leadership and coaching. I think you mentioned about coaching. How do you ensure that your leaders, your coaches in your organization, however they're applicable, how do they ensure that they're bringing in the right culture fit? How do you develop them, their capability to do that?
Sure. So, I mean, for us, we have a one-on-one process. So part of it is we have assets that we use to help kind of using like some books that we really like. We'll provide reading material and things like that. But through the one-on-one process is really where those kind of conversations come to life. It's like, okay, these are the principles, but this is how you apply those principles coming up in the day-to-day situations that you might be involved in. So through one-on-ones, but also we call it management by walking around, where you're just really kind of going through the office, observing how people are doing things, asking questions about what they're working on, and, you know, do they know what impact it is that the piece of software that they're writing has on the rest of the company, and making sure that they understand what the overall impact is. So those are some of the ways that we do that.
A question for the CTO from Flip. You mentioned that you have 6 criteria that you hire with, and maybe if you can share that with us, and if anybody else would like to add on to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So the first one I already talked about is humility. So we want to make sure that people aren't arrogant, that they can take feedback well, that they know that they don't know everything and that there's more to learn. Second thing we look for is hunger, that they're looking to grow, that they want to continuously improve themselves. Third thing would be intelligence, that they have to have an innate ability to think through and reason through things. And the fourth one would be other-centeredness, so making sure that they're not just only thinking about themselves, but how they approach mentoring other people and training other people on the team and helping build up the team. Fifth one would be team first, so prioritizing the team's objectives and the team's outcomes over their own personal outcomes. And then the last one is having an entrepreneurial spirit, so a bias to action, not settling for the status quo and always trying to look at improving things.
Does anybody else want to add something? No? Okay.
Well, thanks very much. It was great listening to you, and I had a sense that you have a lot of international experience up there on the stage. And I was wondering, we're arguably in the most ethnic diverse city in the world, and I'm really curious if anyone has a quick story about something that really stood out about a particular hire. You're hiring people from this great diverse background in Toronto. There must be some amazing positive stories behind that.
So we've actively hired like several new Canadians in the office. And it's been a great experience, I think, for the entire team, because the excitement that comes from only having been in the country for so long, and doing things that they're the joiners. They join everything. So they're like, let's go walk to the CN Tower, okay, because I haven't seen it yet, or like, let's go do this, or they're the joiners for everything, which is amazing, which we love. But some of the stories that came out of that was really important to me. This idea of sort of humility and doing, what it takes, I think, to sort of be successful. One of the gentlemen that we hired in as a business analyst actually came from India, and he actively was working at Tim Hortons here with all of his engineering background and skills. He was working at Tim Hortons. As much as I love our country and I love our city, I do think that we often make it very difficult for new Canadians to find work that's in their field. So, he was working at Tim Hortons, and he had told us that, and he was about to take, I think, a second job at the Source or something. And he was like, didn't want to tell his family back home because he didn't want them to be disappointed in sort of his experience or be concerned about him not working in his field and the sort of struggle that he was going through at the time. But for us, what resonated was, you are willing to do whatever it takes to get your family integrated, settled. There was no ego about it in any way. And that was important for us. Like, you're someone who's going to work really hard, super appreciative of being given an opportunity to work in his field, and probably one of the most engaged, like the smile every day, right? Like, so happy to be at work every day because he's working within his field. But for us, the important message was he was prepared to do anything, and that mattered to us. That sort of level of humility and like really being about doing whatever it took to sort of make it and move forward and taking it step by step was really important for us. And that's ultimately why we hired him over the other candidates.
From a diversity perspective, that is actually a really young person that works with an organization. So that's not necessarily related to ethnicity, but he celebrated his 19th birthday with us probably about a month and a half ago. He's extremely smart, really brilliant, but I think that kind of speaks to the type of culture. We have really, really talented people that work with us, and I think that for us, we don't really care if you have an engineering background from an educational perspective, but if you're a really, really brilliant engineer, then we'll hire you, and the same thing goes from a product design perspective. So I think that what I wanted to mention about him is just like, yeah, he was 18 years old. Well, he was working with us for, I think, what, a year and a half now?
Started when he was 17.
He started when he was 17. So that's pretty cool. And he celebrated his 19th birthday with us. So that just kind of goes to show, and he has a very interesting background and story that it's obviously his story to tell, but regardless, I think that the diversity from an age perspective, because we're lucky to live in a city, a lot of the companies in Silicon Valley are dealing with this whole diversity in tech, and how do we recruit, because it's a very homogenous type of environment there, whereas we're really lucky to work in Toronto, whereas like if you look around the room now, it's extremely diverse within our industry. So we're lucky, we don't really necessarily run into as much of those issues, but from an age perspective, we do have people that are like older and the people that are younger, and I think that this 17-year-old, high school dropout that's a brilliant engineer is like a really, really cool story.
Hello. So I have some bad news. This potentially might be the last question, so I'm sorry for everyone waiting. But with respect to Wrangle's Little Friday Night event, it's actually true. I was there. I had a good time. Yeah. I actually wanted to sing Madonna, but you didn't have Lucky Star, so I was kind of upset. But now back to something serious. Culture, diversity, and my question is going to lead into his. For everyone on the panel, what do you have to say about a study that was published a few months back and by the University of Toronto, where they said that 40% of minority applicants went through a resume whitening.
Yeah.
So they would change their names so it didn't sound like XYZ. You know, it would be like James Smith and whatnot. So when you have as many as 40% of your applicants doing this, how do you comfort them and let them know that they don't have to?
I'm aware of that study, and I was really interested by it. So my mom worked in recruiting for 25 years, and then I was somehow just ended up working in talent and employee experience as well. My mom gave me the name Avery Brooks for a specific reason, and it wasn't because I was named after the black guy on Star Trek. I'm just going to come out and say it. My dad was his favorite guy. So Avery Brooks, that's his the actor that was on it. But my mom actually named me that because it was a unisex name, and my mom was like, I don't want you to be discriminated against in the future because people are going to look at your resume and not hire you because if your name is Kathy, for example, or Emily, they're going to know you're a woman. And it's interesting because it kind of plays into what you're talking about. I haven't had a conversation at work with candidates, but I have coached people around this. And specifically in my beginning stages of my career working in general labor and customer service recruiting, working at Apple One Employment Services in Brampton, a lot of newcomers coming to Canada and knowingly being discriminated against, unfortunately, while applying for jobs and everything. My suggestion would, if someone doesn't hire you, and I'm just going to be honest, because you have a name that isn't like John Smith, then you probably don't want to work for that company anyways.
Yeah.
And that's... No, I know.
The challenge is those people still need to work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They need to get a job. It's a problem. I mean, I feel like it's like in this day and age, it's kind of absurd to me that this is still happening. But I do believe that it's happening. Thankfully, I mean, I know as much as it's not an answer to your question, I think that it's very important for everyone to insist on working for companies that have certain values that are ingrained. And for me, that's been a big thing, right? I've been in HR for 20 years. I won't work for people, I just won't do it. For people who operate that way. And I'm quite blatant about it. I tell people in interviews, if you don't want to hear what I have to say, I'm super honest all the time. I don't know how to not be honest. If you don't like what I have to say, or if you have challenges with whatever, or you only have one woman on your management team, those kind of less progressive thinking, then I'm not the person you want to hire. Or alternatively, you hire me so that I can disrupt it. But because sometimes those companies need people like us more, right? Yeah. We need to infiltrate, totally take it apart. Because in this day and age, it's ridiculous that that's happening. But I don't know if I can offer those people a solution. Yeah. I think research is key. Finding companies that actively make an effort, and I don't mean the marketing effort on their website, right? The cultural diversity numbers that are out there and all of those things, because sometimes it is sort of a marketing thing. You really want to get to know people who work there, find out who these people are that you're working for, and try to target those companies that are more, diversity friendly. And like I said, and if it's part of just who they are rather than something they feel like they have to do, that would make a difference. That would be my only recommendation. It's not helpful because I get that it's a bigger problem that doesn't have a simple solution. Yeah.
Okay, last question over here.
I think you have an answer over here.
I was going to say I would go more industry specific because on the more traditional industries and verticals, I could see people changing their names, and I've had a lot of past lives in technology. But I think in the more modern world, in the world of software, Silicon Valley, big cities, things like that, the need to change it is slowly changing away from that. But I think you do have, for lack of a better word, old white boy companies who need to retire. But those companies are also, with those policies and having those old ways, are also seeing their profits tank. So I don't think they will change on their own, but I think money will make them change. Because you have a lot of places in the world like this now where you have a multicultural thing, where you have everybody mixed together, and the old is changing. It just needs more work.
Okay, last question.
Hi, I came a little late, but I got a nice little overview at the end there. I was wondering about diversity in the sense that, because it's always discussed in and of itself, just being diverse through race or through age, or gender. But I think about how hasn't not been discussed in the sense of accessibility or personality or mental illness or, you know, being inspired by that diversity as part of your process and your culture. I haven't heard that conversation very often, and as someone who's trying to do a startup myself, like that's something that I think is missing in tech, because you don't hear that piece, because a lot of tech is using technology for service and understanding people and their needs beyond just, you know, the physical, right? So have you thought about it in your cultures or not?
That's definitely something that we've been thinking about at Wrangle. From an accessibility standpoint, but specifically to kind of answer your question around, like, I want to focus on the personality piece of it. So right now we're thinking about, like, we have a lot of introverts that work within the office. We also have people that are extroverted, but we have a very open office space similar to this that could be disruptive to someone that is more of an introvert opposed to someone like me who's extroverted, who's okay with that type of situation. So we're trying to understand, like, how can we build an office environment that can help to support those individuals, and that is, and even like extending to religious beliefs as well. Like, we've been talking about putting together, we're going to put this in place, a prayer room for people that need that space, or even quiet rooms. So I think that diversity and inclusion extends far past like gender, sexuality, and you know, race. Extends to the things that you mentioned, like accessibility. We hired someone recently that needs, like, he needs to access to like different floors, and luckily, like, we live in I don't live there, I promise. We work in a space that has an elevator private for the 3 floors that we work on. So that makes it easier for him to get from, you know, the 6th floor to the 7th floor. I couldn't imagine working in a loft building that didn't necessarily have that available to him, because it would make it much harder for him to move around that way. Yeah.
I think for us, it's interesting because I think we could do a better job of this, truthfully. Part of our product has, you know, the original product was a virtual agent product. So there's an admin console. You build criteria within the behind the scenes of the admin console. And then what you actually see on the customer's website, if you go to any of the big banks or any of the hydro companies or anything like that, there is a question box where you can answer questions, and then they would respond back with questions. So you wouldn't have to call a customer service line, for instance, it would basically initially replace most of your FAQs. Now it's far more complex than that. It actually is more omni-channel in terms of conversation. And we've actually been trying to talk to consultants and actually bring some training in-house on how we could help our customers be more accessible. Because the tool exists there, and for a time, I mean, we don't create the content, we don't own the content, therefore we're not required on the accessibility piece, and yet it's the right thing to do. And so how could we help our customers actually be more accessible on that side? And it's something that we've been actively having a conversation on. We specifically just moved offices because we've doubled in size. It was top of the list, along with all of sort of eco improvements, having an office environment that was, you know, less of a carbon footprint, but also had accessibility in mind and already built into the building. And they're not waiting for 2025 when they're required to do it by law, right? They've already got this stuff built in the building. That was top of our list, so we made those steps. But I think from a product perspective, you know, how we would be able to support an employee who, you know, had visual impairments, for instance, be able to work within the admin console is a question mark. We don't actually know yet. So it's become a discussion that's now on the product roadmap with our product managers to figure out, like, this is a good problem to solve, right? So how do we figure that out? Because it is going to be an issue. We have customers who self-sustain on their product, so they don't use our customer success people to actually maintain that product. They have someone on their end do it. And so, again, we don't know who that employee is. They may need accessibility requirements. So we need to figure out how to do that. So we've at least at a minimum started the conversation and started looking at consultants to help us figure this out. There's certainly been lots of training internally, and now we've got it on the product roadmap, which is a huge win, because I don't know, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work and it's a big problem to fix. So the fact that there's that investment, I think, is going in the right direction for now. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for those great questions. Thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights and expertise this evening. Just wanted to ask everyone to give them a big round of applause.
So thank you to our panelists tonight, and thank you everybody for attending. We're still here for the next 45 minutes or so, so feel free to network and chat. And FYI, thanks for all the tweets online. We've been trending on Twitter for the past hour and a bit. So all this feedback and quotes you've been posting is pretty good and helpful. And thanks to the panelists for sharing your insight. And hope everybody had a good time. And let's have a good 45 minutes, I guess. Thank you.